Battle is heating up. Utah judge selects new congressional map, tossing map drawn by lawmakers. A Utah judge ruled late Monday that a map drawn by state lawmakers and submitted by Utah legislature unfairly favored Republicans. Judge Diana Gibson of Utah's 3rd District Court made the late-night ruling and selected a map, referred to as Map 1, brought by plaintiffs in the case, the League of Women Voters of Utah and Mormon Women for Ethical Government. The ruling narrowly upheld the November 10th deadline to select a new map in the state ahead of the 2026 midterm election. The map drawn by lawmakers, referred to as Map C, was submitted to the court in September after Gibson initially ordered the existing map be redrawn to better align with the state's redistricting law on Proposition 4. So for those that haven't watched my other videos, and to give a quick recap background summary, Proposition 4 was submitted by the people of Utah. It won by like 0.3, I already forgot the number, but like 0.3% of the population. It was a few thousand votes that actually allowed for Prop 4 to come into place. Prop 4 allowed for, it was specifically to require a group that would be created to create maps, and they were given certain rules about keeping certain districts together. You had to keep certain cities together. You had to limit the amount of breaking apart of cities and counties. You had to follow geographical lines. Who was selected for the committee was was detailed out by, like, you had to have a majority leader and the minority leader from the House and from the Senate. And I think like the governor got a pick or something. I don't know. There was a bunch there. Actually, I think I have it pulled up. Nope, that's the maps. Well, I had it pulled up. I don't know where it is anymore, but Proposition 4. 2 years later, the House of Representatives and the Senate of Utah changed the law, saying, well, that can stay, but we're only going to use it as a recommendation, and we don't have to choose the recommendation. So they changed the law again. These women decided to challenge that in court, and in court it was found that because the people, meaning the people directly, because it was a proposition, voted for this by a 0.3 margin. It wasn't even a full percent, but by a very small few thousand margin, that trumps legislators 2 years later changing the law. So Republicans are going forward with this order. They created 5 maps, and of those maps, they chose Map C. And you can see here, this is Map C. It divides up Salt Lake County. I believe a portion of Utah County was also sliced up just a little bit. And the judge looked at that and said, this is the most unfair map of all the maps, so I'm choosing Map C. Now, here's the problem that I have, that everyone is, that I've heard many individuals who seem to be a little bit more liberal in Utah, like, whether or not it's fair, that's not my argument. My problem is that we are a state of laws and rules, and we've had laws and rules for hundreds of years. And the law is that the legislature gets to decide the map, not a judge. So elected lawmakers decided to change the law after a very narrow margin, mind you. So they get to pick. Now, I'm going to ask this. Why wasn't gerrymandering already, what's the word I'm looking for? Why wasn't it outlawed 200 years ago? Why wasn't, when we created the Utah Constitution 100 and so years ago, why didn't we put into the laws that you couldn't do this? Maybe because, personally, I think the forefathers actually saw this, our founding fathers. I think they knew what could happen with majority leaders. And so my point is, they knew it could happen, they knew it would happen, and they didn't do anything to stop it. And now we're trying to stop it. That's fine. We evolve, we change. Here's the deal. We didn't make a definitive change, and I'm sorry, but the more I look into this, the more I'm just like, this is an activist judge, okay? She is trying to just give Democrats a stronghold. And again, I'm not saying that Democrats do or don't deserve a stronghold in Utah. I'm just saying she's doing it, in my personal opinion, for activist reasons. She wants them, Salt Lake City, to have a Democrat seat. So here we are. Well, I guess that's going back into the past. So Map 1 was drawn to include nearly the whole county of Salt Lake County, while Map C split the state's only Democratic county into 2 different districts, which, I'm sorry, it should. It has to be, because, Salt Lake County has to be divided. That's my point, because there are more people who live in Salt Lake County than there are that can be assigned a seat, which means it has to be divided. That is the only option. The question is how much of it is divided and by how much. Me personally, I think if it's a county, it should be as 50-50 as you possibly can. That's my argument. The decision prompted Governor Cox to call the legislature into a special session. Again, this was a few weeks ago, where Map C was selected and submitted. In October, Map C was contested in court after a series of statistical tests were performed. So basically, it goes to court. Everyone's trying to say why it's a good one, why it's not fair, why it is fair. The GOP they implemented a new repeal of Proposition 4 and referendum to throw out the very map being argued up in court, and Republicans later abandoned the referendum plan after it became unfeasible to gather the signatures required in time, and now seek to repeal Prop 4 with a ballot initiative instead. So they're going to be moving forward with a ballot initiative to repeal Prop 4. Personally, I think a lot of Utahns are actually going to vote for it. I don't know how many exactly, but I think a lot are, and I think it's because, look, we live in a day and age where we're becoming so much more polarized and so much more bifurcated that at this point, the question comes down to, in my opinion, there either is a God or there isn't a God. And for those who don't believe that there isn't a God, they choose to be God. And from their perspective, once it boils down, I haven't had a single argument that doesn't actually boil down to this. I haven't had a single argument that doesn't boil down to, like, it always has to boil down to this every single time, that might makes right on when I argue individuals from the left perspective. Either might makes right, and if it does, then I'm sorry, Utah's might is right. We're gonna go with the right, and we're gonna win. We'll make right, so we'll make it right. Or there is a God, and maybe there's some level of fairness that maybe we should play by, and that's kind of where I think the right is divided, especially in Utah. Mixed reaction. By midnight, Representative Matt McPherson, West Valley City, threatened to file articles of impeachment against Judge Gibson, which I think he should, while others called her decision a display of judicial activism. It was. McPherson told KSL TV he filed a bill to open articles of impeachment as a placeholder until a poll of the House confirms enough intent to move forward. So he filed one as a placeholder. He's going to be doing a poll, find out, is there enough people who want this? Are we going to move forward? I think they should. The Utah State Bar retaliated against the notion Tuesday afternoon, saying it strongly condemns any effort to impeach Judge Diana Gibson based on her recent ruling. Let's see their reason. Judges are charged with applying the law to the facts of their case without regard to politics or public opinion. All right. The facts are, the Constitution says that the legislator have the right to decide and pick the map. The legislature has the ability to change laws from year to year, regardless of what the people decided that they wanted. The legislator has that power. If the people didn't like what their legislators were doing, okay, first and foremost, maybe they would have voted for Proposition 4 in far greater numbers if they actually believed in this. I think a lot of individuals didn't know what they were voting for, and it was chalked up to, when you'd Google it, it would basically just be, you want fair elections? Let's make things fair. Let's be fair. And it probably just said fair a lot. And so people voted for it because it's like, it sounds good on paper, but no one really considered what they were actually asking. There are some individuals I'm aware of who actually contacted their representatives and said, hey, Prop 4 passed. Actually, I voted for it, but I'm mad that I did because I didn't realize what it was and they asked it to be changed. That's few. It's like 2 people I know. Doesn't really matter. I'm just saying there are some people. Now there's going to be the opposite side, some people who voted no, and then now they're looking at the situation and they're like, whoa, I should have voted for that, right? Let's make it stronger. Regardless, the legislature changed the law again, like we do constantly, and the legislature picked a map, and Diana, a judge, not a legislator, picked the map and said, your map doesn't qualify. So no, she does not have the facts on her side, and it should be going to appeal, and she should be impeached. Using impeachment as retaliation for an unfavorable decision undermines the rule of law and separation of powers that safeguard our system of government. I agree with the second sentence. The problem is the first sentence doesn't apply. The judiciary must remain free from political pressure so all Utahns can have confidence in fair, impartial courts. True. So why is she overruling the Utah Constitution for a political advantage for a group that is slightly a minority in Utah? Sounds political to me. Impeachment is reserved for serious misconduct, and disagreement should instead be addressed through the appeals process. Agreed, it needs to be appealed, but also this is a blatant lie on her perspective. Now, again, I am not arguing whether or not Democrats should or shouldn't have it. My argument is they are trying to win through nefarious means. The judge can't say that the Constitution says that the legislature gets to pick a map, but because people changed the law and then it got changed again, that you don't just get to change a law, so I get to pick the map. Sorry, doesn't make sense. At the very least, she should have handed it over to like a different committee or something to decide, not her herself. It just doesn't make sense that she can. I could be wrong, but it could be well within her purview to say that the legislature needs to form a committee and have the committee decide, maybe. But again, they'd probably still end up picking map 1. But she can't pick. The Constitution's clear. She can't pick. We urge all public officials and Utahns to respect the role of the judiciary and the independence of Utah's courts. All right, so now let's get into Governor Deidre Henderson. She stated contrarily that she would comply with Gibson's ruling and immediately implemented Map 1 unless otherwise ordered by an appeals court later on Tuesday morning. Henderson said, that's today, there will likely be an emergency appeal, but defended her move to waste no time in making the change. The process of finalizing new boundary details will take weeks of meticulous work on the part of the state and county officials, she wrote. Barring an appellate court ruling, we must begin without delay to ensure that everything is in place for candidate filing in January. The people of Utah deserve an orderly and fair election, and we will do everything in our power to administer one. Now, first and foremost, I don't like the lieutenant. She annoys me. I don't think she's a friend. I think she is a wolf in sheep's clothing just as much as Cox is. And I will say, though, I agree with her. The judge made your decision. Just move forward. Go to the appeals. You should still push for impeaching the judge as a legislature. You should also appeal to the higher courts. Totally fine with me that she's moving forward. It'd be better that she move forward and that this gets finalized than that she doesn't. We do need that part figured out. Simultaneously, Utah Democrats celebrated the decision. We, the Utah House and Senate Democrats, feel a deep sense of hope and relief following Judge Gibson's decision to adopt the plaintiff's Map 1. This is a win for every Utahn. We took an oath to serve the people of Utah, and fair representation is the truest measure of that promise. Yeah. So here's my problem. It's not a fair representation if you're not actually following the truest measure. Okay, the truest measure should be that you're going to follow the Constitution. If that's not the promise you're referring to, then I'm not sure what you're actually referring to, and it makes me call you into question as to your actual loyalty. Okay, your loyalty doesn't seem to actually be the Utah Constitution. Constitution of the United States might even come into question at that point. I'm not going to say definitively that it is, but it might. Utah legislative leaders, President J. Stewart Adams and Speaker Mike Schultz, issued their own statement Tuesday afternoon. Late last night, a single unelected judge set aside the Utah Constitution. Agreed. And I don't like Stewart Adams, by the way, but, you know. And the voice of the Utah voters selecting a map drawn behind closed doors by out-of-state advocacy groups. Yep. So the Utah legislature came up with 5 maps based on the rules that had been established that they create. They created the 5 maps. They went to the legislature and said, which one should we have based on the special session from Governor Cox? And they picked Map C. They present Map C to the judge. The judge says, no, I'm picking a completely different map that you guys had no say in, and we're going to go with that one. Sounds like someone's an activist. The process the judge chose denied the people of Utah a chance to see it, to weigh in, or to be heard. The judge disregarded the Constitution. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Where is it? We were allowed to leave notes. Utahns could come in here and say, I have an opinion on the map. My goodness, this is horrible. Move. There we go. So hover over here. Here's a good one. I dig this map. I love how everyone gets to... Oh my goodness. Something part of public lands to Congress. Okay, yeah. Represent part of the public lands. Not listening to the Independent Redistricting Commission was not surprising. The Utah legislature rarely listens to its constituents, so it's little surprise they would also opt to remove the voice of the quarter of our population. Okay, first and foremost, it's a quarter that is divided up, and and they do tend to congregate in Salt Lake City, so it can't be a full quarter of them that are in Salt Lake City. So it's like, well, like I get that there's a quarter, but it kind of makes sense that there might be 4 Republicans. Now, I'm not saying that there has to be 4 Republicans. I can understand and feel for the argument that there should be, that one of the seats could be a Democrat in Utah. I understand that. But here's the deal. Like, they do rarely listen to the constituents. I also don't like most of the Republicans in power. But my point is, we have a rule of law. The law has not been changed. Legislators should. And they had the opportunity to hear mostly negative comments for the maps that were drawn. So yeah, she picked one that the Utahns didn't even get a chance to look at and examine and leave notes on. So like, again, it's clearly just a game. She's playing the game. She's actually playing the game quite well. And Republicans need to play it better. At a press conference held by Better Boundaries Tuesday, plaintiffs spoke, beginning with co-executive director Emma Petty Adams. Today, the people of Utah are getting what they voted for 7 years ago, she said, a fair map. That's not true. It can't be fair if you didn't follow the rules of the Constitution and the people didn't get a say in that map. She just picked it regardless of the legislature, and the legislature came up with 5 maps. At the very least, she should have picked one of those 5, not a new one. Okay? It's not fair. Whew. So there you go. I'm going to kind of leave it here. If you disagree with anything I say, like I always say, leave it in the comments. Like, subscribe, share this video with anyone who cares about the map. Share it with someone who disagrees with me so that they can tell me why I'm wrong, or share it with someone that agrees with me so I can get my name out there, I guess. Ultimately, guys, I just want to see Utah return to most of its core values. And yes, most of those core values are going to come from an LDS worldview. But my main point is just Christianity as a whole. And I think we're losing our Christianity in Utah. And it's going to lead to some very horrible, terrible things in our future. We're losing the soul of Utah. And right now, I'm kind of up for whatever legal means we can to push it in our favor, right? If right makes might, then, well, might says I want my worldview to win over than others. So we'll kind of leave it there. I'm not saying that I think right makes might, by the way, but we'll leave it there. Till next time.